Chapter 12 of The Island at the End of Everything, The Orphans. Sister Teresa snores. It wakes me up early and I lie with a tangle of knots in my stomach listening to her. Twice in the night I'd reached for Nane and found only emptiness. We are all red-eyed and reluctant when she strides up and down the room ringing a little bell. The room looks even sparser in the grey morning light. It is bigger than I realised, and there is a whole row of empty beds against the windowless back wall. The shutters on my side open onto the scrubby courtyard where we arrived. Sister Teresa instructs us to change out of our travel clothes. All of us fell asleep in them, and we looked rumples as rags. She collects them into piles and gives them to Tekla. The first chore is the laundry. We will organise a rota. There is soap in a box in my desk. You must ask permission before you use it. As we are not quite prepared for this number of children yet, I will get some more supplies today, but even then we must use our resources sparingly. I'm uncertain how to answer after being the only one to speak last time, but Sister Teresa is looking at me expectantly, so I reply, "Yes, Sister Teresa." "Thank you, Amihan." "Girls, please follow her lead, otherwise it sounds like I'm talking to myself." Tekla nudges one of the two Igmis and they snigger quietly. "Goody two-shoes," hisses Tekla. Heat rushes to my face, but Sister Teresa doesn't hear. "After we have made you presentable, you can meet the other children. They are anxious to make your acquaintance." I remember the whispers and the scuffling and hope she is telling the truth. "Let's get started then. Follow me." We do so, Tekla wrinkling her nose at the dirty clothes in her arms. The door to the boys' dormitory is closed, so Sister Teresa opens it and stands in the doorway, ringing her bell until we hear them waking up. "Change into clean clothes, then join us outside," she says. "Mr. Zamora?" His face appears suddenly around the door. By the look of his bloodshot eyes and his yesterday clothes, it seems as he hasn't slept. "You will need to ensure the boys rise earlier in future. We can't fall too behind in the day." Sister Teresa does not go up the stairs, so we have to wait to meet the other children. We follow the nun outside, leaving Mr. Zamora looking very much like he got out of the wrong side of bed if he'd laid down at all. The cart is still there, the driver asleep in the back. Sister Teresa leads us quietly past, and I suspect she believes he deserves a rest more than Mr. Zamora does. When the boys join us, rubbing their eyes in the early morning light, we set off across the courtyard and down a narrow track through the thick forest. Kidlak keeps close behind me. His brown eyes are wide and frightened, fringed with lashes, starfished together from crying. He has put his tunic on back to front, and I crouch to turn it the right way around. He watches me closely, whimpering when I pull his thumb from his mouth so I can manoeuvre his arm out and back into the correct sleeve. I take his pudgy hand and we run to catch up with the others. "This is the way to the river," Sister Teresa is explaining. "You can come here as often as you wish, as long as you never miss lessons, and tell someone where you're going." The day is already full of a sticky, wet heat that hovers under the trees and makes their shade uncomfortable. The light dapples everybody in a green, deep green like lily pads. I follow behind one of the Igmis, but she seems to be interested only in being friends with the girl called Riseley. They walk close together, heads bowed and bodies turned slightly towards each other to fit down the narrow path. Nane is the only person I ever told secrets to, and a horrible sinking feeling drags at my legs. She is my one, only, true friend, and no one here seems interested in talking to me, unless you count Kidlak, who doesn't talk. I blink rapidly as we approach a wide, shallow river. It makes a splashing sound as it runs over rocks, and on the opposite bank the forest nudges right up to the edge, trailing branches and leaves along the surface. Flowers spread out here and there like fans. "This is where you can do laundry. Past this point," Sister Teresa indicates a large rock, then pulls out a box of soap from her habit. "Take it in turns to wash. We will establish a proper rota soon. Kidlat, you first. It takes an hour for all of us to get clean and dry off with the rags Sister Teresa pulls from yet another pocket. I help Tekla with the laundry until it is my turn to bathe, swilling the clothes and then scrubbing them on the large rock with soap. But she still doesn't smile at me. I suppose this is her way of dealing with the weight in her chest. Mine is to remember all the things I see and do so I can write them in my letter to Nane. So far I have the journey here, cart, boat, cart, the little bell Sister Teresa uses, and her seemingly endless pockets. I hope the way Sister Teresa treats Mr. Zamora will make Nane laugh. There is no sign of him when we get back, but the cart driver has lit the fire pit and is cooking a large omelette. There is a small mountain of eggshells at his feet. My mouth waters as he throws in a handful of wild chives. This is Luco, says Sister Teresa. I doubt he introduced himself to you. He doesn't talk much. Luco is our cook, though soon we will have more staff arriving from the mainland. Luco turns on his haunches and nods at us. He is built like Bondoc and has hair that grows straight up and out from his head. I add the fact that we have to cook to my mind letter. I shall go and fetch the other children, and you can make your introductions over breakfast. Luco, can you fetch Tildy for me? Luco moves the pan off the fire and heads around towards the side of the building. Igmi and Lele set to whispering as Sister Teresa disappears into the shade of the orphanage. In the daylight I can see that it has 2 floors, like Dr. Thomas's house, but it is at least 6 times wider and has no balconies. It is painted a muted yellow, with the newer section a richer shade, and above the door, in thick black letters, it says Coron Orphanage. At the very top, a bronze cockerel turns in the wind. The shutters are open at the top right-hand window, and I wonder if whoever had seen us arrive last night had watched us leave for the river this morning. We hear the tramping of many feet on the stairs, and Sister Teresa leads 2 lines of children blinking into the sunlight. They all wear warm but uncreased clothes, and their faces are clean, their hair brushed and parted perfectly. Sister Teresa stands in the middle, and they separate in a straight line either side of her, boys on one side and girls on the other. It feels as though we are about to start a game, and our Cullion side would lose. Kidlat slips his hand into mine. All of them look straight ahead, except one girl at the very far end of the line. She is paler than the others, paler than any of us, her hair light and flyaway, making a halo around her head. She scans us when we scan them and stops on me. Her eyes are huge and widely spaced. I blink and she looks away. Children, meet your new companions. I am going to town to collect some more supplies. As you can see, Luco has used all the eggs. Mr. Zamora? Sister Teresa calls into the shade of the building. Mr. Zamora comes outside in clean clothes, his tie knotted tightly and his straw hat pulled low. Can you please keep an eye on the children until I return? I'm nearly done setting out my samples. Please? Sister Teresa's voice is careful. Just while I'm away. No, snaps Mr. Zamora, a ropey vein in his neck taut. You can wait for me to finish. Luco returns with one of the horses that collected us from the harbour. This must be Tildy. Sister Teresa purses her lips while Mr. Zamora goes back inside. We wait in silence for several minutes. Sister Teresa's foot taps impatiently. As soon as Mr. Zamora re-emerges, the cook leans down, making a cradle of his hands, and Sister Teresa swings herself up onto the horse easily. Without another word, she digs her heels into Tildy, and they take off at a gallop down the long drive. Watching a nun on a horse is like watching a dog walk on its hind legs. It's like a trick. Mr. Zamora hovers uncertainly outside the orphanage. It seems as if he does not want to come close to us. He drags a chair from the schoolroom and sits on the threshold, eyes flickering over us as if we could attack at any moment. I think of the samples, the live butterflies somewhere inside. Nane would have loved watching them escape back in the forest, the twisting, colourful rope of them darting beyond Mr. Zamora's fingers. Luco squats by the fire again, throwing in something diced that scents the air with mouth-watering sharpness. The orphanage children are still lined up like Mr. Zamora's butterflies, neat and impenetrable. After a few more long seconds, Day 2 steps forward and holds out his hand to the tallest boy in the line.